Hello again and welcome back to Shorts in Psychology. Today we're going to examine two theories related to the trait conception of personality, Hans Eysenck's 3 dimensions of personality and Costa and McRae's Big Five. This approach to personality assumes that behaviour is determined by relatively stable traits which are the fundamental units of one's personality. They are habitual patterns of behaviour, thought and emotion. Traits predispose one to act in a certain way, regardless of the situation. They remain consistent across situations and over time, but may vary between individuals. Character traits are often shown with descriptive adjectives like patient, jealous, or confident. It is presumed that individuals differ in their traits due to genetic differences. Hans Eysenck proposed a theory of personality based on biological factors, arguing that individuals inherit a type of nervous system that affects their ability to learn and adapt to the environment. Using a technique called factor analysis, he reduced behaviour to a number of factors which he initially grouped into 2 dimensions. Each dimension is a continuum where an individual will be at some point on the scale. These dimensions then combine to form a variety of personality characteristics. The first dimension described by Eysenck was the Extraversion-Introversion Scale. Extroverts are sociable and crave excitement and change, and thus can become bored easily. They tend to be carefree, talkative, optimistic and impulsive. They are more likely to take risks and be thrill seekers and feel more at ease in groups. Extroverts enjoy being the focus of attention and often accumulate a larger social network of friends and associates. Eysenck believed that extraversion is linked to levels of brain activity or cortical arousal. Extroverts experience lower levels of cortical arousal, resulting in them seeking arousal from external stimuli. Introverts, on the other hand, lie at the other end of this scale, being quiet and reserved. They are already over-aroused and shun sensation and stimulation. Introverts shy away from large social gatherings and they may feel uncomfortable engaging with strangers. Instead, they maintain small groups of close friends and are more likely to enjoy contemplative exercises like reading. Introverts are reserved, plan their actions and control their emotions. They tend to be serious, reliable and pessimistic. Eysenck believed that as introverts already experience higher arousal levels, this leads to them avoiding stimuli, which may lead to a further increase in arousal. As I mentioned before, extraversion is measured on a continuum, ranging from high extroverted to low introverted. However, rather than being at one extreme or the other, most individuals will lie somewhere along the middle of the scale. Eysenck also proposed a second dimension, emotional stability to emotional instability or neuroticism. Eysenck believed that a person's level of neuroticism is determined by the reactivity of their sympathetic nervous system. Individuals scoring highly on neuroticism tend to experience higher levels of stress and anxiety as a result of having an autonomic nervous system that responds quickly to stress. They worry about relatively insignificant matters, exaggerating their significance and feeling unable to cope with life stresses. A focus on negative aspects of a situation rather than the positives can lead a person to adopt a disproportionately negative outlook. They may feel envious or jealous of others who they feel are in a more advantaged position. Neuroticism is also characterized by perfectionism and a tendency to feel dissatisfied, angry or frustrated with others when their desires are not fulfilled or when their expectations are not met. A person with a low neuroticism score will generally experience more emotional stability due to their nervous system being generally less reactive to stressful situations. As a result, they feel more able to cope with stressful events and set less stringent demands of themselves. Individuals with a low level of neuroticism are also more tolerant of the failings of others and remain more calm in demanding situations. Again, most individuals will fall somewhere along the middle of this continuum rather than being at one end of the scale or the other. Eysenck later added a third dimension, the Psychoticism-Impulse control dimension. Individuals with higher psychoticism scores can be lacking in empathy, cruel and aggressive. They are more likely to engage in irresponsible or miscalculated behaviour. They may also contravene accepted social norms and be motivated by a need for immediate gratification, regardless of its consequences. In contrast, higher levels of psychoticism have also been linked to a more advanced creative ability in individuals. Eysenck suggested that psychoticism was influenced by biological factors and was correlated with levels of hormones such as testosterone. The higher the testosterone, the higher the level of psychoticism, with low levels related to more normal, balanced behaviour. Individuals with low levels of psychoticism have the ability to be in command of their behaviour, whether it is overt, covert, emotional or physical, and tend to have the ability to restrain or inhibit their impulses. They are warm and empathetic. A middle score on psychoticism might mean that you are a bit eccentric, or that you take risks that other people aren't as likely to take. One way to remember Eysenck's 3 dimensions is with the PEN acronym: Psychoticism, Extraversion, Neuroticism. Many psychologists felt that Eysenck's 3-factor theory was too limited in scope. As a result, the 5-factor theory emerged to describe the essential traits that serve as the building blocks of personality. The 5 broad personality traits described by the theory are extraversion, agreeableness, openness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism, and this model is one of the best accepted and commonly used models for describing personality. As for Eysenck's 3 dimensions, each of the 5 personality factors represents a range between 2 extremes. For example, extraversion represents a continuum between extreme extraversion and extreme introversion. In the real world, most people lie somewhere in between the 2 polar ends of each dimension. Let's look at each of the 5 traits in more detail. Openness is the tendency to appreciate new art, ideas, values, feelings, and behaviours. This trait features characteristics such as imagination and insight, and those high in this trait also tend to have a broad range of interests. People who are high in this trait tend to be more adventurous and creative. They are open to trying new things and tackling new challenges. People low in this trait are often much more traditional and may struggle with abstract thinking. They dislike change and resist new ideas. Conscientiousness is the tendency to be careful, on time for appointments, to follow rules, and to be hardworking. Standard features of this dimension include high levels of thoughtfulness with good impulse control and goal-directed behaviours. Individuals high in conscientiousness tend to be organised and mindful of details. They spend time preparing and enjoy having a set schedule. People who are low on this trait tend to dislike structure and schedules, procrastinate, and are untidy. Extraversion is characterised by excitability, sociability, talkativeness, assertiveness, and a high amount of emotional expressiveness. People who are high in extraversion are outgoing and tend to gain energy in social situations. They enjoy meeting new people and being the centre of attention. People who are low in extraversion, or introverted, tend to be more reserved and have to expend energy in social situations. They dislike small talk and being the centre of attention, preferring solitude. This personality dimension includes attributes such as trust, altruism, kindness, affection, and other pro-social behaviours. People who are high in agreeableness tend to be more cooperative, whilst those low in this trait tend to be more competitive and even manipulative. Other characteristics of those high in the trait of agreeableness include feeling empathy and concern for other people, whereas those low in this trait tend to have little interest in the feelings or problems of others. Neuroticism is a trait characterised by sadness, moodiness, and emotional instability. Individuals who are high in this trait tend to experience mood swings, anxiety, irritability, and sadness. Those low in this trait tend to be more stable and emotionally resilient. You might find it helpful to use the acronym OCEAN: Openness, Conscientiousness, Extraversion, Agreeableness, and Neuroticism when trying to remember the big 5 traits. As always, let's finish with a few past exam questions. Pause the video while you answer both parts of this question. The first part of this question is just a straightforward knowledge and understanding question where you have to summarise one trait conception, which could either be the Big 5 model or Eysenck's 3 dimensions of personality. Either way, you need to ensure you have 3 ideas well described to receive all 6 marks for the question. In terms of how you structure your answer, you could start with an opening sentence describing or defining the model, followed by a brief description of each trait. The amount of detail given for each trait depends on whether you are describing the 5 factors or just 3 dimensions. In Part B, you need to describe a weakness of the trait conception in general. Here you could discuss points such as the difficulty to maintain the notion of a trait if people's behaviour varies over time or situation. The fact that it pays little attention to the role of the unconscious. It doesn't explain the role of nurture, such as child rearing and early experiences in forming personality, and offers no explanation of personality development. Pause the video again while you answer this question. In this question, you have to describe Andre's personality using the trait conception rather than just describing the theory. Therefore, your description of Andre's personality needs to be clearly relevant to the chosen theory. It's worth 4 marks, so you need to pick out 2 relevant characteristics and link them to aspects of a trait theory. This means you do not have to describe the entire model, but only the aspects that relate to the characteristics of Andre's that you are describing. Creating new characteristics that aren't relevant or plausible would receive no marks, nor would merely listing characteristics given in the question. You could relate your 2 chosen characteristics of Andre's to either the Big 5 model or Eysenck's dimensions of personality. So this is what we're told about Andre. He's hardworking with a busy job. He's often required to work with groups of people. He prefers to work on his own. He worries excessively about co-workers who don't work as hard, and he would rather read a book than go to a party. Therefore, there's plenty of material here to discuss using either the Big 5 or 3 dimensions of personality. For example, Andre being hardworking with a busy job could be related to the trait of conscientiousness. So a model answer could look like this. Conscientiousness is the tendency to be organised, hardworking and display goal-directed behaviours. Andre has high levels of conscientiousness as he is hardworking with a busy job. This would require him to have a set schedule and spend time preparing. Similarly, his ability to work with groups of people could be linked to the trait of agreeableness. The other 3 characteristics fit to the same trait within both the Big 5 and 3 dimensions of personality. You could define neuroticism and relate that to Andre's tendency to worry excessively about co-workers who don't work as hard. For example, neuroticism is a trait characterised by moodiness and emotional instability. Individuals who are high in this trait tend to experience a lot of stress, worry about relatively insignificant matters, and feel frustrated with others when their expectations aren't met. Andre would be on the higher end of the neuroticism scale as he worries excessively about co-workers who don't work as hard. Lastly, you could conclude that Andre is low extraversion, high introversion, as he prefers to work on his own and would rather read a book than go to a party. For example, extraversion is characterised by excitability and sociability. People low in extraversion or introverted tend to be more reserved and have to expend energy in social settings. As Andre prefers to work on his own and would rather read a book than go to a party, he is low in extraversion. There are multiple other ways you could structure your answer using these theories, so this is just one suggestion. However, hopefully it has helped you understand and apply the trait perspective of personality. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.